How y'all doing? My name is Reginald Garth. I am the owner of Beast Canine Fit, and today we're going to break down my mindset of how I would train a dog, one of my clients currently. So right now, she is a 2-year-old, excuse my handwriting, female pit mix. All right. A little bit about this dog. She's 2 years old. The owners got her as a foster at first. Did not necessarily want her. They wanted a different dog. She turned out to be a bigger dog than she normally is. It's kind of a story you hear a lot as a trainer, and they have gone through a trainer before, right? So the first thing I think of is if these people have already gone through a trainer before, this means that they're probably going to already know a few things as far as what I call party tricks. Party tricks are going to be your what most people call your basic obedience, your sits, your downs, your recalls, your place. And that's exactly what the case was. They kind of knew already, and the dog also kind of knew how to do these party tricks, but what they were missing was something we'll get into in a second. So more about it is they are not entirely sure if she's dog reactive or if she's just like overly prey driven. And the reason I say that is because once they've had her in the backyard, she has broken out of the backyard, ran across the street, and got into it with two other dogs. They had to separate the three dogs. She ended up having stitches. They had to go take her to get stitches. And then when it was time for her to get the stitches out, she ended up doing something to reopen the stitches and have to get more. So this tells me that this dog, of course, being this breed, is has a lot of prey drive. So the first thing that I asked them is, okay, with these types of behaviors, do you guys play with her? Do you guys take her to play ball? Do you guys play with the flirt pole? What do you guys do to satiate that drive, satiate that need to chase, catch, and kill? So a lot of times they say they take her for 2 walks a day. All right. So this is also pretty typical with dog owners. It's not going to be enough. That's going to be the first thing to come through my mind is that we need an outlet for her. All right. So this is when I ask them, what can the dog do on command that the trainer has already taught you? Right? So they pretty much said that she already has a place and a sit and does not have a down. So we kind of went over that. She doesn't have a down, so I can already see right here that this training wasn't necessarily the best in the world. So I go out of my way to not necessarily talk down on other trainers. That's not my place to talk on how other people's business, other people's way of teaching. But when I see this is all that they have. They've been through a trainer before. It lets me know that they're missing one key thing because they've had this dog since she was a puppy. So she was 6 months old. She's 2 years old now. They're missing something before you do any of this nonsense. You need actual proper communication. And all that is when I tell people proper communication, that's simply know your rights from your wrongs. Yes and no. Simple as that. All right. I just want her to understand that when I tell you yes, you're doing what I want you to do. When I tell you no, you need to stop doing that right now. But before we get into any of this, we need to learn our communication of yes and no because all these things is our way to tell our dog how to get to a yes and how to avoid a no. Simple as that. That's like when it comes to pet training, our place, our sit, our down, our thresholds, our all of that just simply means do these things to get paid and avoid a punishment in the future. If your dog doesn't understand that there is a possibility of them getting paid every time or punished every time, these things will never matter because these things are things that don't get them to where they want to be. All right. So moreover, they've already had 2 lessons with me. So these are things that we kind of went over in our first 2 lessons. All right. So let's erase this. All they want is, let's talk some more. All they want is just to have her be more of a calm, controllable dog, which she's in that age range of she's coming out of the puppy stage into the teenage phase into the adult phase. She's 2 years old. She has a year to go of just the craziness of like just pure drive. I do what I want. And with no communication, they have no way of controlling that. So let's continue. She also has a thing where she barks and growls and hits their window when she sees delivery people walk by, other people walking their dogs. They live in a very, very, how do you say, there's a lot of people walking all the time in their neighborhood. So when I go there, or I've been there the couple times that I've been there, there's always been someone walking down the street with their dog. So she's very, I would call it barrier aggressive, but it's more of just her prey drive leaking because she sees something moving outside. So another thing is that she is allowed on furniture. She's allowed on furniture. She barks and growls at the window. And then she also has already been on, so this is going to be an important part for what I talk about in a second. She's already been on, as far as equipment, a prong collar and a e-collar. So these things are going to be important in a second. So these are going to be two tools that I would already have necessarily recommended for this type of behavior. But now I have to be cautious because if she's already been on these two equipments and all we've been able to achieve is a sit in a place, then these two things might have caused some type of conflict between her and her owners, which it ended up doing so. So when we did our consultation, we had them walk her on the prong, and the owner was taught to use a prong incorrectly. So he was basically starting a lawnmower. So he was doing a lot of cranking, right? No communication, no, just every time she moved, every time she did something he didn't really like, he would crank. And then on top of that, he would kind of keep a stiff leash the entire time. That's telling me that you're applying pressure to her the entire time with no way of letting her know how to alleviate that. So what he's doing the whole time is he's screaming the whole time they're walking, right? He's screaming no the whole time they're walking. And then what he does when she actually does something wrong is go. That's when he cranks, all right? And there's no alleviating. There's no you're doing a good job. There's no this is what I want you to do. So she's pretty much a damn if you do, damn if you don't type of situation. So it's like, why not just pull you to wherever I want to be, do whatever the hell I want, because there's no way of me getting what I want otherwise, right? So this is where we have that conflict of the prong. Now, the e-collar we'll get into in a second, but let's talk about what we did in our first lesson. So all we did in our first lesson is what I just said a second ago, is build our basic communication. So she's very food driven, very biddable, which means I can easily mold her into doing what I want by having motivation. So that tells me that she is trainable. She is, all dogs are trainable, but she is trainable. She is easily to mold into what we want. We just have to show her how to get there. So all we did in the first lesson was we took our prong. So we ended up using the prong in the first lesson. We fixed that. But the important part we did is what I call a T-drill. And all that is my way of teaching the yes marker. The yes marker is going to be our basic positive reinforcement of food. You do what I ask you to do, you get rewarded. So the way that this works is you start, this is going to be our T, okay? You are standing right here first. You're going to have some food in your hand, treats in your hand or whatever. You're going to say yes. You're going to toss a treat that way. Dog's going to go over there. They're going to get the treat. And then once they pick up the treat on this side, you'll say yes again, toss a treat that way. They'll walk past you to get to the treat on this side. You'll say yes one more time and hand the dog the treats from your hand. So the dog will come inside and you'll walk backwards. All right? So it's going to be pretty much yes, toss, yes, feed out of your hand. They'll come to you. So the important part of this is that when you're tossing, you're only tossing one treat. And then when you are feeding out of your hand, you have a small handful. We'll go 3, right? Because we want them to realize that when I say yes, if you want the highest value, if you want the biggest reward you can get to, you come to me. All right. So this ends up working on many different spectrums because now the dog is going to start paying attention to you because you have more value than what's out here in the environment. Also, this will start to build on your recalls because now the dog has to get to you as fast as possible in order to get rewarded. And that's literally a recall. Okay. So that's what we did first. All right. We got them to the point where they understood that. And then we moved on to simply teaching leash pressure. So we're fixing where our male owner, because this is a married couple, our male is pulling and cranking on the leash nonstop, not giving her the chance to understand right from wrong. So we already just taught our yes. We're not teaching our no per se, but we're teaching that the pressure that you feel through your prong means something. It isn't always just pressure on for no reason. It actually means something. So what we did then is pressure on, then something that she knows. So she knew a sit. She gives us our sit, pressure's off, and then after the pressure is turned off, we mark it. So we'll go here with that. We'll mark it with our yes and reward. Oh my goodness. But so this is going to be how the structure of how we will communicate with our dog for the next 4 other lessons because they bought a 5 lesson package. All right. So pressure on. So when we go pressure on, we're not cranking, we're not popping, we're not doing any of that. It's going to be very annoying. Ting, 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 pressure. Right. So we're going ting, 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 ting. I'm almost jiggling the chain of the prong collar. And then we tell her to do something she already knows. Okay, because she's already been through some type of training, so we can pretty much double back to what she knows so that we can make this communication page easier. So pressure turns on, we tell her to sit, she puts her butt on the ground, pressure turns off, so we stop jingling the chain, we say yes. That's marking the behavior, letting her know what you just did is getting you rewarded, and then we reward her. Simple as that. So what we're doing is that we're not only just clearing up the conflict that we've created with our prong collar, we're also teaching her that pressure in a certain way means to do a certain thing. So when we talk about pressure in a certain way, when we're going sit, we're going straight up. So it's straight up, ding, bing, 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 until she puts her butt on the ground. Then pressure turns off. I almost like to make it super exaggerated. So if I'm going with the eraser, I'm going to pressure, bing, 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 bing. So she sits, I let go of it altogether, all right? Because I want the owners to realize that when I say pressure off, I mean it. Almost drop your leash. It has to stop. So she understands that this is how I turn this shit off, all right? So once that happens, we get these reps in. All we're doing at this point is, okay, you got it from a sit. Now let's do a down. So like I said earlier, she doesn't know a down, right? So we do what's called luring into the down. We give her a lure into the down. All that is we take the food in the palm of our hand and we show her with her head where to go. Because the thing about dogs is that they do everything to benefit themselves. So, and also wherever the head goes, the butt goes the opposite way. So just like how you've probably seen on many other videos, when people are teaching their dogs to sit, or if you've even seen people tell their dogs to sit, they always go, sit, right? That's luring, but that's skipping steps. A lot of trainers will skip steps of a lure because they're too lazy to actually go basic by basic for the lure, all right? So all we're doing here is we're taking our food, we're bringing the nose down. Whatever the nose does, the butt does opposite. So normally I go into a downward dog position, and a lot of times we can just hold the food there. Once they hold the food there for a certain amount of time, that butt will drop, pressure turns off, mark yes, reward. So now all we do is once we get those reps without pressure, so we can do this without pressure first. So we can just literally lure into a down, mark reward. We can do that, all right? But if we want this learning to accelerate and to fix the issue we've already made with our prong collar, then we'll add our pressure instead. So what we'll do now is that we'll go pressure straight down, right? So remember, sit was going straight up, down is going straight down. So ding, 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 ding. So we're pressure on going down. We'll lure her into the down. Once she lays down, pressure turns off. We mark yes and reward. So our pressure is pretty much our communication as well as our fixing of the issue that we've already had. So she learns that she can turn it off. So if you think about it, we're telling you, depending on which way we move our leash, we're telling you to do the same thing twice. I tell you to down, and I'm showing you to down. You can even think of it as 3 times. I tell you to down, I lure you into a down, I press you into a down. I told you to down 3 times. Just so you can do it, and I turn it off, and I reward you. Okay? So this is why this type of thing works. This works for her. So this did very well. So we did that. We also did the same thing for a recall. All right. So this is all our first lesson. We also did the same thing for our recall. So it's same thing, pressure on. So we'll go PO. And then we went, actually, no, that's not how we went that. We tossed the treat. So this is going to be the difference between the two, the sit and the down, and then our recall. We tossed the treat. So we tossed the treat. Then she went and got it. Once she went and got it, pressure turned on. We said here. And we kind of reeled her in, right? So pressure turns on because once she's out there, the only thing we can do is kind of pull the pressure in, right? So pressure turns on. We say here, she comes to us. Once she gets to us, pressure turns off. Then we mark it and reward it. All right? So I'm making it seem simple, but all of this has pretty precise timings, right? You toss it, that doesn't really have a time, you just toss a treat. But you don't want to toss it so far that she hits the end of the leash and now she corrected herself, right? You don't want to pop. You want her to toss it just far enough so she can get it with no pressure. Then we turn the pressure on. We don't let them hit the end of the leash for this. There's a reason why, because we let them hit the end of the leash for a different type of behavior and a different way of communicating. So we toss it, pressure turns on. That's one way of communicating. Our here, tell her to here. That's our second way of communicating. When she gets there, pressure turns off. That lets her know that she did what we asked her to do. And then we reward her for doing what we asked her to do. So we literally tell her to do something twice and then reward her twice. The reward her twice is coming from the fact that pressure turned off. So that's me rewarding you, that you did what I asked you to do. I'm gonna stop messing with you. And then we actually give her the reward. That's our second way of rewarding her. Okay. So that's what we did on that one. And then the last thing that we did for that second lesson is just simply we went for a walk, right? Went for a walk and we just kind of like let her decompress. So the second lesson is pretty much the same, but different. So we went over what we just did. We kind of did a review of that stuff right there because, not everyone practices as much as I would want them to. So we just give them a reminder of this is what we're doing. And now things switch up a little bit, okay? So the only thing that switches up is that now we're going command first, so sit, right? Then pressure turns on. Now, why do we do that? Simply, we tell her something that we want her to do first, and then we turn pressure on, pretty much saying that, hey, I know you know how to sit, and then I'm gonna turn pressure on. So now what gets into her head is that, hey, so let's go through the whole thing first. Sit, pressure turns on, she sits, pressure turns off, mark, reward. All right, so we do it this way because what she already knows sit. Beautiful. So sit, pressure turns on. So it gets into her head that pressure is going to come after I ask you to do what I need you to do. So once we've gone so many reps like this, what she's going to go is, once I hear this, if I do it fast enough, I can bypass this BS. Right? I can bypass all of this. All of this right here, I can get away from it. Because if I put my butt on the ground fast enough, all there's left is for me to sit, for me to get rewarded. So if I want my paycheck faster, I'll just skip this part. Sit, butts on the ground. I don't need that. I know that's coming. So what this becomes is your backup plan, or what's called a punishment. So this is going to be basically a correction down the line. All right, so we'll talk about corrections in a different video, but this is going to become a correction down the line. And this does not, because of how we're doing it and how we taught it, this doesn't have to be a crank. This doesn't have to be hard. This doesn't have to be a yell, a shout, or anything like that. It's just sit, you didn't sit, pressure turns on. Because you know that this process is going to happen regardless. All you've been doing as of lately when you've been doing good is skipping this. All right, so if you don't skip it, then it's going to happen. And it's not going to stop until you make it stop by doing what I asked you in the first place. So this is what we did with both our sit and our down. And we also did that with our place. So what we did with our place is the same thing, same concept, but now we're starting to introduce our 3Ds. Our 3Ds is going to be your distance, your distractions, and your durations. All right, so we're moving kind of fast through these, but the reason we're moving fast through these is because, like I said earlier, she's very food motivated, she's very biddable, and she's already been on two types of equipment with another trainer. So we worked on our distance, duration, and distractions with those just on the place using that same method. So now what we started to do is that I got them to understand that how to use their prong. So now we're going into their e-collar. They had an e-collar already. I am an advocate on making sure you don't cheap out on your e-collar. You have a proper e-collar because not all e-collars stimulate the same. All right, so this is the issue we ran into. I grabbed their e-collar and we were pretty much gonna do what we did in lesson 1, but now on a different equipment that she's already been introduced to. Reason being is that they want to be able to control her behavior inside and at certain times. So what we're whirling into is that we'll take off the prong because we won't be able to correct those behaviors every time on the prong because she's going to understand that the prong is there to, when the prong is on, she's going to have a leash on. She's going to understand that, oh, I can get corrected this way. So this is where the e-collar comes in, because now we can correct those behaviors in the home while not having to come and actually grab her, right? But what we ended up running into is that we went on the same tangent as we did in lesson 1, is pressure on. So this was the plan. Sit. She does it. Pressure turns off. We mark it. And reward. Same thing we did in lesson 1. Nothing changes. The strategy doesn't change. Just the equipment. So literally we're doing this on continuous. So pressure turns on, we press the button at continuous. She does what we asked her to. Pressure turns off, we let go of the button. Yes, reward. Now, I had the e-collar that they had. I'm not going to say the brand, but the e-collar they had, I had it on a level 1. I think it went up to like I don't remember, probably like a 12 or so. I had it on a level 1. I stemmed her on level 1, and she shut down. She kind of cowered down. She felt it. She was like, I really don't want to do this anymore. She didn't want to take food anymore. So what does that tell me as a trainer? This right here has had the same effect as the prong, except there was a difference. Because we were able to kind of move her through the prong pretty easily, but she did the same, but the same thing has been happening. Now, what the difference is that she has learned that the prong collar eventually is going to turn off. The e-collar, she couldn't get away from. So 9 times out of 10, I believe that when they were teaching e-collar, they were immediately off leash already. When she felt the pressure that was too high, because the e-collar was way too hot, is what I call it. The e-collar was way too hot to be at a level 1 and for me to feel it, because normally on most e-collars that are like more expensive, more high quality, normally you won't feel a stem on an e-collar until like a 10 or 11. I felt it on a 1, and I felt it really bad on a 3. So the e-collar was too hot, first off. And then the e-collar was too hot. They had it on continuous, and she probably tried to run from it. She couldn't run from it because we're literally holding a button. So she learned that shutting down is the way to turn pressure off. So all she did was, we took this off, right? We take this off. This is what she learned about the e-collar. Pressure turns on. I shut down. Pressure turns off. All right. So this is our issue that we're dealing with now. So how do we fix this? This is what we're going to work on in our lesson 3. How do we fix this? And my mind says that we get rid of this hot ass e-collar. We get rid of it. We replace it with a much smaller, well, I wouldn't necessarily say a smaller, but a higher quality one where the stem isn't so freaking hot and so freaking hard that it triggers that emotion, and then we kind of have to fight through that emotion. So we don't change our game plan. All we do is take some of the pressure off. Because we are not here to give her correction when we're learning behaviors. All we're doing is saying or giving, when we give pressure, all we're doing is giving that push into it. We're not going, hey, do it. No, we're not doing that. We're just kind of coasting them into it, like giving them more of a push into doing what we want. That's why when we work on the prong, we make it go in certain directions, because we're showing you, hey, this is how you do it. This is the way I want you to go. Now, there's no direction here. So since there's no direction, we always start off with the lowest level that they can feel. But if the one is super high off the rip, then we can't even go down anymore. So we ruin our relationship with our dogs, with ourselves, and with the equipment. And this is where these two types of equipment always find a bad rap, because people use them the wrong way. But we're not going to get into that. So what we're going to do now on our next lesson is we're going to go low level stem, into our sit, mark, we'll turn it off, of course, mark and reward. But this reward is going to be bigger, right? So we have to change our emotional state around this e-collar. So now it's not like, hey, shutting down isn't gonna get you anywhere, but putting your butt on the ground is gonna get you to the motherland, right? It's not only gonna make it turn off, it's also gonna get you to a big reward, because now we're doing more of a rehab than a behavior mod, or more of a rehab than an actual training. This is why just coming in and going sit, this is why that right there doesn't work. You need communication. You need to be able to tell your dog, yes, that's what I want, or no, stop doing that, or good, keep doing it, I'll reward you later, or if you do that again, you're getting in trouble. That's why those things are so important. I don't understand why trainers don't teach these things, because you cannot reliably have behaviors that most people see on Instagram or on Facebook or anything like that if you don't have a reliable communication. So that's what we're going to work on in our next lesson, as well as, since we talked about our window issue, because that's their true issue, is their window issue is that now we're going to start working on, now that we can put our dog into certain behaviors and we can teach our dog, we can tell our dog get right from wrong. Now we're going to start putting it to the test. So when I get there, I'm going to just stand at the window, and their job is to have her stay in place, because we worked on distance, distraction, and durations. So stay in place until they come and open the door for me. They're going to mark it. They're either going to give her a correction for leaving place, or they're going to reward her for staying on place until I get into the house. So once that's done, then we're gonna roll into this. All right. So once we roll into this, what we're gonna do afterwards, because they have 2 other dogs, they have 2 senior dogs, and she's perfectly fine with them. And another one of their goals is to be able to walk all 3 of them without her pulling them down, because they've kind of burnt their resources in a relationship with this equipment. So she's kind of just doing whatever she wants. So now we're going to use the information that we've already learned, everything we've just taught her, and then we're going to take her out on a walk after we do these 2 things. We're going to take her out on a walk with one of her housemates, if you will, because we need to get them reps in on calmly walking with her first. So we got reps of working with just her first. Then we'll walk with another dog, and then we'll add a third because they don't necessarily want this stuff for their other two dogs. So we have to make sure that she is no longer the issue on their walks. If the other two dogs are an issue on their walks, that's not really my area. That's because they don't want this. So I'm not going to force this on them on their senior dogs. It's just not what they want. So I'm not gonna do that for them. So I will say though, but if you are dealing with something like this, it is very important that if you can teach all three or all four or all or both of all whatever dogs you have, teach them this same stuff so you can uphold a standard in your house or in on walks. Because if one of them is like this and the other one's not, the other one's gonna be like, well, how come you can get away with what I and when I don't? And then you're gonna have holes and issues into your scheme. So if you can, I would rather you teach both of them all of this stuff so that you're able to just kind of be able to communicate with them both at the same time without giving so much effort. All right? But that is how my mindset works on working with this specific dog. As we get more clients, we're going to do some more of these. And if you have questions on anything, let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. But that's it for me, guys. Thank you for watching and listening to me shout at you. And I'll see you in the next one.